welcome to Mark's Garage. I'm going to go over the contents of the third year equipment and parts kit, just to let you know of a few features you should know about before you go playing with this on your own. We'll open up the box. Inside, it should look basically like this. First thing I'm going to remove here is the oscilloscope and function generator module. This is a USB-based oscilloscope and function generator. I'm going to have a separate video on how to set this up and use it. You'll likely figure this out on your own for the most part. It might still be worth watching. You might pick up a few things you didn't catch on your own. Totally up to you. You don't even have to finish watching this video if you don't want. Next up, resistors. So there's basically 10 values of each value, and the values look something like this. Let me just haul this on the screen. Pop this over. So basically you've got between 10 ohms and 1 meg, and you've got these values in between. So there's 10 of each. It should be all the resistors you need for the labs you have to do, and actually a little bit more than that. You'll probably be able to use them in your own little projects as well. Okay, the next would be the capacitors, and let me just pop this off for a second. So you've got your little bag of film capacitors, these little yellow ones. You've got your bag of aluminum electrolytics, and underneath the meter you'll find a little tiny bag. It has some ceramics, some 0.1 microfarad ceramics and some 100 picofarad ceramics in here. There's 200 picofarads and 5 0.01 microfarad ceramic monolithics. Also in this bag is a couple diodes, some LEDs, a transistor, and yeah, that. Now, next we also have the power supply module and the power supply adapter. And this is actually a wire to hook up your power supply to your breadboard, so don't lose that either. We'll just put that aside for a second. One thing to note, this module is got a universal plug-in. So for North American, which is the one provided, you just snap this little puppy in and this will plug into the wall and give you power. If you want to run this in China or some other country, Europe, you'll actually have to buy a different adapter module. And let's just grab that data sheet. So the data sheet shows the different available clips for the different countries. So this is the part number for the US. You have Brazil, China, Europe, Korea, and so on. So if you're in that part of the world, you'll have to go to Mouser.com and pick up the extra adapter for that. Unfortunately, they're sold separately. They don't come as a kit, which would have been a lot easier. I don't know why they didn't do that, but que sera. Now, next we have, actually, one thing about the power supply module. Just let me open it up here. Okay, so this is your power supply module. What happens is this produces 15 volts regulated DC, capable of providing 2 amps. That's great if that's the only voltage you need it, or if you wanted just a single 5 volt regulator you could throw on there to get 5 volts out, that sort of thing. In your labs, you're going to be needing variable voltages, usually 2 voltage supplies, a positive and a negative. So what happens is we take this little thing here, we cut it off, we make sure we get the right end as far as the polarity, and we're going to strip these 2 wires and put them into this end of this little module. And out of this module will come plus and minus, a plus voltage and a minus voltage, and a ground. And they're labeled underneath here. So you have your V in and your ground, you have your V plus and your V minus and your ground. That voltage is then set with this potentiometer right here. There's a little screw on this potentiometer, and you can set that by, there's a little screwdriver in your kit here inside the probe set that you can use to adjust that, and you can adjust that, I think, from 3 to 12, maybe 13 volts. It'll still be regulated, but it's adjustable here. So that'll give you plus and minus 12. In order to make that work, this has to be loaded. So there's a certain size resistor that has to go here as well. I'll do an entire video on setting up the power supply module and using it as well. So that's another video to look forward to. Yeah, that's right. In here, this package here is your multimeter. You'll have to get yourself a 9-volt battery for this. It doesn't come with one. I apologize for that, but we might have to, these things might have to be shipped by air, and there's certain restrictions on batteries and stuff, so I didn't want to get into any of that. So it's up to you to get yourself a battery for this puppy. It's just a standard 9-volt. Shouldn't be too hard to come across. In this little bag here, this is where all your static sensitive devices or devices that have leads that are easily bent will be found. They're packed in foam. On one side, there's your Arduino that you'll need. It's an Arduino Nano that you'll need for the microprocessors course. You also have 2 memory chips that are needed for microprocessors course, as well as the switch here and the potentiometer are meant for that course. There's also an op amp here for your analog, for your circuits course, as well as 2 transistor arrays, an NMOS and a PMOS transistor array, I believe is what's there. So keep these in their bag. When you're not using them, return them to the foam when you're done with them. It's not going to be that easy to get replacement parts if you mess them up, guys. So take care with them. When you're inserting them into your breadboard, when you're hooking up your power, check, double check. You can't afford the mistake, because it's not like you can just walk around the corner from the lab and talk to Tyler and say, Tyler, I blew up my component, can I get a new one? It's going to be a whole different procedure to get a replacement, if we can even. So, take care. Make your life easier. It might cost you a couple extra minutes, but it'll save you a lot of hours. Next, we have our wire kit, our breadboard wire kit. Let me just open this up. You'll notice these wires are cut to different lengths, and that length is color coded, okay, to match breadboard steps. So the breadboard is set up in 0.1 inch increments. So there's there's basically a wire in here with no insulation at all. It's a little short one. That's 0.1 inch. Then the colors start. You get red, which is 2. It's just like resistor color codes. So 2 means 0.2 inch. You get orange, which is 3, so that's 0.3 inch, and so on. 0.4 inch, 0.5 inch, right up to the white, which is 0.9 inch. And then if you want 1 inch, then you jump up to the brown, which is 1. So that gives you a 1 inch. These larger ones aren't really, they kind of duplicate the colors that are down here, but they're actually just large wires. Same thing here. They're great for doing, long distances. So it's a great way to set up your circuit neatly, tidy. It's 0.4 inches from the top up here down to the first hole. It's 0.3 inches from the second hole of the rail to the first hole of this. It's 0.3 inches across this gap here in the middle. And again, it's all repeated down here. So use your wires to make your your circuits as neat as possible. It'll save you a whole lot of time in troubleshooting your circuits. This is a USB cable to hook up to your USB net or to your Atmel Nano or Arduino Nano. I recommend, you can see how short it is, getting a USB-A to USB-A extender cable so that you can bring a cable up onto the desk you're working on to hook the Nano to. It'll make your life a little easier. So I just put that aside. This is just a little keypad, little membrane keypad for your microprocessor course in case you get to that lab. In this little bag here, you've got your scope probes for your scope, and again, I will go over the operation of that. Also, in the back of this kit is your cable for the function generator output. So it's just a BNC to alligator clips, and in here you'll find a little pack which contains little scope probe pieces, but also a little tiny screwdriver. And you can use that to adjust your pots as well as it's meant to adjust the little screw for compensating your probes on your scope, but it can also be used to adjust your screws on your potentiometers. Now there's one more thing I want to go over with you, and that is how to read the values on your capacitors. Your aluminum electrolytics, no big deal. It's written right on them. For instance, this one says 470 microfarads. You just read it right off the side. So no issues there. You've got good eyes. You'll have no problem handling that. The ceramics and the metal film ones, they're a little trickier to read. Basically, you get, say there's 103 written on your capacitor. The first two are significant digits with a multiplier. And then there's an implied multiplier that isn't on there. So it's basically 1, 0 times 10 to the 3, and then times 10 to the minus 12. So that, if you do the math, you're going to come up with 0.01 microfarads. 103 is 0.01 microfarads. 104 will be 0.1 microfarad. If you say 154, that will be 0.15 microfarad, and so on. Okay, so that's how you read your film capacitors and your ceramic monolithics as well. The ceramics, a little small. Your eyesight's probably not going to have a problem reading the number on them. These days, I have to use a little magnifying glass. I doubt you guys are going to have the same problem as I do. But if you do, grab yourself a magnifying glass. It's worth it. Pour this little bag out. You get to see what's in it. Now, you want to keep track of these things because they do have numbers on them, but you can barely read them. With my eyesight, you younger people probably have no problem with that. But just to make life easier for you, these three diodes look identical, but this one here, the one that's in a single piece, is the Zener diode for your lab. This one here is the silicone diodes, 1N4148s. There's two of those. These little black ones are your Schottky diode, 1N5118s, I believe. And of course your little 100 picofarad capacitors, your 0.1 microfarad capacitors, and your transistor, your 2N22 or PN2222A. So just put all those back in the bag, and all right, so that's your kit in a nutshell. Do enjoy, and do join me in my next two videos showing how to get that power supply up and running, and as well as how to quickly get your scope up and running and what to do with that. Thank you.